Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah and day 8 of the Christmas Craft Countdown, where I'm releasing a new craft project every day for 20 days. Today we're back to layered paper craft projects and we've got this gorgeous little Christmas scene with Santa and Rudolph in front of a lovely Christmas tree. This layered design is probably one of the more complex ones that have been released. It has lots of layers to it, lots of details, but don't let that worry you because it is just as simple to put together as all of my other layered designs. This design has a little bit of an option to it, so you could choose if you wanted to leave out the blue background with the snowflakes and just have the tree and then Santa and Rudolph underneath. But if you want to keep it in, like I did, of course, that's completely up to you. Let's find out how to get the file to make this shadow box design. First, you need to download the cutting file to make this project. If you aren't already signed up to the Christmas Craft Countdown, go to craftwithsarah.com/Christmas 2021 to join. If you have already purchased the countdown, go to craftwithsarah.com/login to log in to your account and access all of the Christmas Craft Countdown files. Once logged in, click into the Christmas Craft Countdown. Scroll down the page and all the files will become available on the date specified. The files do not expire, so you can download them at any time. The cutting files for this project are under the Day 8 heading. After downloading the cutting files, you'll need to unzip the folder that they come in. If you aren't sure how to do that, check the link in the description of this video, which contains instructions on how to unzip folders on Windows computers, Macs, and Android and iPhone devices. Once you've unzipped the folder, it's time to upload the SVG into Cricut Design Space. Open up Design Space and create a new project, and then go into Upload on the left-hand side. Then you can go into Upload Image. From here, you can either click Browse to find a file on your computer, or you can drag and drop it in. There are several different cutting file formats included when you look in the folder. The one you want for Cricut Design Space is the one which starts SVG in the file name. It's really important you choose that file. If you choose any of the other ones, it won't load properly. So I'm going to drag and drop in the file which starts SVG in the file name. Once the preview is loaded, it should look like this with all of the layers on top of each other. If yours looks different and you see each of the individual layers next to each other instead, that means you've accidentally uploaded the wrong file. So if that's the case, go down to the bottom and click Cancel, and then try again and make sure you upload the one which starts SVG. But if yours looks like mine does, then that's all good to go. So let's click Upload on the bottom right. Once that's uploaded, it will appear in your recent uploads. So you can click on it to get that green border and then press Add to Canvas. And here is what the design looks like. Now, what I really like about this particular design is that it's really flexible in what you want to do. I'm just going to zoom in a bit to make it easier to see. So for example, if you didn't want to cut the snowflakes in the background, all you need to do is scroll down on the layers panel, find those very two bottom layers, which are the blue ones, and then click the eye icon next to them. And that will hide them, which means your Cricut won't cut those layers. And the design will still look beautiful without it, so it's just completely up to you. Likewise, you could also hide the Christmas tree. So let's do that. Let's click the eye icon next to the two green Christmas tree layers. And then we also need to hide those stars and the little circles. And then you could cut this out with just the reindeer and the Santa. Now that's the only bits you can hide. You can't hide the Rudolph as well to just cut the Santa, and that's because these layers all use different parts. They're all connected, so these two have to remain. If you changed your mind and then did want to cut the Christmas tree, all you need to do is click those eye icons again, and it will all come back on. And the same with the snowflakes, just click the eye icons to bring it back. You'll want to resize the design before you cut it out to make sure that it'll fit inside your frame. I have a separate video on how to resize layered SVGs to perfectly fit inside your frame, including how to measure the frame and my top tip for making sure you never waste any cardstock. If you'd like to check that out, then look in the description of this video and I'll put the link to the other tutorial in there. I've already measured mine, so I know that I need to make my height 7.5 inches, which is going to be the tallest side. So I've typed 7.5 into the height. My padlock icon between the width and the height is closed. If yours is open, then click it to close it. And the reason we want it to be closed is that after you type in your height, press enter on the keyboard and the width will automatically change in proportion. So this now still looks really good, but it's at my new height. So it's ready for me to click make it on the top right to get everything cut out. Design Space will split it into all of the different colours. By default, it sets everything to be cut on 12 by 12 inch cardstock. Now, I don't really have a lot of 12 by 12 cardstock. Most of mine is A4. So if you're like me and you want to change the paper size, simply go over to the left and look in the drop down and change it to what you want. So I'm going to go A4. You might find when you do that Design Space splits it over onto several different pages. Sometimes that might be needed, but sometimes it's not. For example, I reckon I could fit that other shape in this space here. So to change the mats around, go and find the one you want to move, click the three little lines and then press Move Object. Click the other mat in the same colour, and it is really important that you select the same colour mat. Press Confirm, and then that's moved that over here. Now there's not quite enough room, you can see it's still overlapping, but you can move everything else about so that you can reposition everything to get it to cut. So now my Cricut wanted me to do this on 2 sheets, but I've moved it onto 1, which means I get to save that second sheet of cardstock for another project. You do need to change the paper size for every single colour that you want to change it for. So for example, I'd need to change that one too if I also wanted to cut it from A4. When you're happy with all of your paper sizes and also the positioning of all of the different layers on those sheets, click continue down on the bottom right and then follow the on-screen instructions to cut everything out with your Cricut machine. Here's my design all cut out and I've just laid the pieces on top of each other to check that I've got everything and that I'm happy with the colours. I have already stuck the eyes and the little pink cheeks on the Santa, and I've stuck the brown eyes on the reindeer to the layers that will go underneath, just because those pieces are really small, and I cut this out a couple of days ago, and I didn't want to lose those pieces before I had a chance to stick it all together. So let's get all of these layers, and I'm just going to move them out of the way so that I just have these 2 left. And this is the very bottom part, and for these 2 layers I'm going to glue them together. The glue that I'm using is called Kalau. It is a brilliant glue for cardstock because it doesn't buckle or warp the card like some other glues can do. Other great glues to use for this is Art Glitter Glue or Barely Art Glue, and I'll drop the links to my favourite products in the description of this video. I've put my glue into a needle tip applicator bottle. It's got this really thin nozzle which is going to make it super easy to get my glue in all of these teeny tiny places. So let's turn this upside down and add the glue to the back. You want to make sure you've got a good amount of glue on this piece because this is going to have all of those other layers of cardstock on top of it. So it will get quite heavy and you don't want those other layers falling apart under the weight. So I'm just making sure I've got a good amount of glue on here. There we are. Now I can pick it up and stick it on top. One of the nice things about glue is that if it doesn't quite line up, you can wiggle it about a bit to get it to line up, but that actually went on pretty well. The next layers to add are the green parts for the Christmas tree. They look like this. So we've also got the star and then 2 little baubles on the tree, which we'll come back to in a moment. Can't pick it up. There we go. But the first one we want to put on is this solid green part. And for this, we're going to use 3D foam pads to give it some dimension. The foam pads I use are these ones from Dot and Dab. I like them because the paper comes off really easily, so I find them nice and quick to use. But there are so many different brands available out there of foam pad, and all of them will work great. I've cut my foam pads in half because they were quite big, and by cutting them in half, it just means I don't need to use as many. So let's turn this upside down and add some foam. So I'm making sure I've got some in that star and in all of the other little sticky out places. Try and get some in that reindeer antler, but you need to be careful that the foam pad doesn't go in the little gap in the middle of the ear and the antler, and also make sure none of your foam goes over the edge of the card, otherwise you'll be able to see it when you turn it round. And we don't want to be able to see any of that foam. You need to make sure you add some foam into the middle of these pieces, especially the larger ones, because it forms a nice stable base for the other layers to go on top of. If you didn't put anything in the middle of this, then you'll find that the card will sag down under the weight of the other layers, and it just won't look as good. It won't be as 3D, and we don't want that. We want our Christmas shadow box to be as beautiful as possible. So here we go. And then I'll line this up and gently place it down. And the reason I do that is so that if I needed to, I could pick this up and it will come apart nice and easily without damaging anything because I've just gently put it on the top. But I'm happy with how that's all lined up, so I'm going to push down and then bring in the next layer, which is this one. And this one's going to get glued. So I've turned it upside down and I'm going to put my glue on here, get in all of these narrow parts of the tree. There we go, and then I can just run that around the edge. And some in the middle. Here, turn it over and stick it down. Okay. I'll add the little star at the top, seeing as we're working on the tree at the moment. I'll put a couple of bits of foam pad on there and then add the star. Not sure it really matters what way up it goes. So let's just give that a try. That looks pretty good. And then this little layer is optional to add a bit of detail to the top of the star, so you don't have to add it on if it's a little bit fiddly. But I'm going to just put a tiny bit of glue around that edge and then pop it on the top. There. And then the 2 baubles I'll put on, I think just with a bit of glue, but you could use foam. So 1 in the top and 1 in the bottom. My glue's gone a little bit stringy because I left the lid off by mistake for a long time. So that's why I was kind of wiggling my finger around to try and get the strings of glue off. Alright, so that's the Christmas tree done. Now we can move on to the next layers. That is the 2 red layers. And the first one we want is the solid one, which will go on with some more 3D foam pads. Turn it upside down. And now this works in exactly the same way as when we did the green layer a moment ago. Here's my foam all on, so let's bring this back and stick it into place. And then the next red layer will be glued on top of that. And this is making all of that lovely snowflake detail in Santa's hat and also the stripes on Rudolph's scarf. This is a great instance of why these needle tip bottles are great, because some of these edges are a little bit narrow, but this bottle just makes it so easy to get the glue in. Stick this one on top. There. And next we're moving on to, I believe, some white layers. Or it might be brown. Let's have a look. There are lots of layers to this to get all of the detail. The next layers are these two, which is a solid white and then this one on top. And this is the one that your eyes for Rudolph will be stuck to. And as I said at the beginning, I've actually already stuck his eyes on there with some glue because I didn't want to lose the pieces. For the solid white, this will go on with more foam. Moving on to the brown. And these are going to go on here like this, but I'm actually going to glue these layers. So both of these will be glued. And that's because otherwise, as there are so many layers to this, it will just get a bit too thick and I don't want to risk it being too tall to go in my shadow box. Put that one on. And then the detail on top, which will make the pattern in Rudolph's head. This one is going to be glued too. And then make sure you get some glue around that pattern. Stick that one in. Okay. Got his horns to go, and these are two separate parts. I'm just going to check I've got them the right way round, which I believe I do. And then these ones will be glued too, and it's easier to put the glue straight onto the white part and then line these up rather than the other way around. There. Okay. Next are these two layers, which make up Rudolph's little snout, and I will use some foam for this so that his nose is popping out a little bit. So I've got the solid white, and this is the one that the foam pads will go on. You can start using a bit less foam as the pieces get smaller, but still make sure you've got at least one bit in the middle of any large areas so that you've got that stability. There's that one. And then this one will be glued. The download folder that you got from the Christmas Craft Countdown does include an assembly guide, which is a PDF file, which shows all of the layers and the order to stick them in and whether to use foam or glue for each one. And that guide is printable, so if you don't craft near a computer, you can print that out to see everything you need to do really easily from your craft space. The next layer we have is Santa's face, and this one will be glued once more. Tap that on there and glue it down. And then we've got Santa's beard, and the bottom piece of this is the one where you can glue on the little rosy cheeks and Santa's eyes. So I have already done that, as you can see. So I can just glue the rest of it on the top. You could use foam for this bit if you want, but it is getting quite thick, which is why I'm keeping it to the glue. There, and then the detailed part with all of his beard on top, and again, just a little bit of glue. This one's a bit tricky because it's so thin around those edges, so take your time, more time than I'm doing. I'm rushing this a little bit for the video. So that it stays nice and neat. There. Okay, nearly done. Just a few little details to go. We'll start with Santa's moustache. Just going to go on there with a little bit of foam. So I think just 2 bits on there is plenty. Stick that on. And then his rosy little nose on top is going to be glued on. There we go. For his 2 eyebrows, again, I'm going to use some foam. And I think it'll be easier for these to put the foam directly on our design. And then stick the pieces on top, because they're quite small. The bigger eyebrow is on the left, and then the smaller one goes on the right. There we are. We've got the bauble on the end of the hat. Again, I think this might be easier to just add the foam pads directly on. Peel those tops off. Then first piece, and then the decorative part to go on the top. I'm going to add some glue to the back. Again, if this bit's a bit fiddly, you could leave it off. Stick that one on there. And now the only thing we have left is Mr. Rudolph's lovely red nose. So 1 piece of foam. Add that on. And then we have the detailed part on top, which you could leave off, just like with the bobble on the hat. There, let's stick that on. And there we go, our design is all put together. I hope you enjoyed this video on how to make this layered Santa and Rudolph papercraft project. Don't forget to get the file, go to craftwithsarah.com/Christmas 2021. I'll be back again tomorrow with another Christmas craft project, but until then, thank you so much for watching. Bye!